Good evening, everyone. The 25th regular meeting of the Medford City Council, June 22nd, 2021. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Bears.
Present.
Councilor Falco.
Present.
Vice President Knight.
Present.
Councilor Morris.
Present.
Councilor Morrell.
Present.
Councilor Scarpelli. Present. President Caraviallo.
Present. Please rise and salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilor Scarpelli. Hold on a second.
Is the meeting minutes correct?
Committee reports.
Meeting
That's
minutes?
31213 398.
Yes.
Take paper 21398 out of order. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Second? Oh, no, what did you do?
Second by Councilor Bears.
Forgot that.
Okay. Reports of committees. June 15th, 2020, a committee of the whole report. This was, okay.
Mr. President, I just wanted to let the council know and let the viewers in the audience know that this committee report was prepared by the Assistant City Clerk, Sylvia DiPlacido. It concerns the committee vote last week to reappoint me as City Clerk, so I'm going to step away from my desk and the Assistant City Clerk is going to call the roll and do whatever else is necessary on this paper.
Yeah, you want to ask me a Sylvia? So this is to motion report from the committee of the whole to reappoint the clerk for a term of 3 years. Motion to accept the report by Councilor Bears, seconded by Councilor Scarpelli. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilor Bears.
Yes.
Councilor Falco. Yes. Vice President Knight.
Yes.
Councilor Mott.
Yes.
Councilor Morrell.
Yes.
Councilor Scarpelli.
Yes.
President Caraviallo.
Yes, 7 in the affirmative, motion passes. While we're doing the reports, we might as well do the last one. 21403, June 16th and June 19th, committee of the whole reports. This is in regards to our budget, which is still ongoing. The motion by Vice President Knight, seconded by Councilor Morrell. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Motion,
Mr. Clerk? Mr.
Councilor
President?
Falco.
While we're on the topic of, you had just mentioned budget, have we received any responses from the administration yet with regard to any of the questions that were asked during the budget hearing so far?
I have not received anything in my package, unless you've seen something different in your package.
I have not received
So I have
anything, but I
not,
just wanted to, I didn't know if anything was,
I have not seen anything different, Councilor Falco.
have they communicated anything?
I have not had any communication with the mayor's office.
Thank you.
No.
Mr. President,
Councilor Scarpelli.
while we're on suspension, we take up paper 21-419.
21419, petition for a common victual license by Ellington Victor de Oliveira, 6 Vine Street, Spencer, Mass. for Gravitator Pizza, 399 Main Street, Medford, Mass. I'll refer this over to the chairman of licensing. Sir, if you could please step to the rail and give us your name and address for the record, please.
399 Main Street, Medford, Granville Pizza.
Okay. Councilor Scarpelli.
Thank you, Mr. President. I see, review everything. Everything looks in order. I know we have a couple of questions. Mr. De Oliveira, what are your business hours?
11 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Okay. And how many employees will be working for you?
3.
3? And you'll have a delivery service too?
Yes.
Okay. I know we had one question that the establishment opened before this was approved. I know we talked and
Yeah, I'm
there
so
was
sorry.
just a
get-
misunderstanding.
Yes.
I did check with, it wasn't with the clerk's office. I did go through Mr. De Oliveira's paperwork. All of the departments are updated now and in order, so I wait for any comments before moving approval from my colleagues.
Do we have any comments?
Mr. President.
Vice
I, for
President
one-
Knight.
I, for one, am glad to see this storefront finally have somebody suitable to fill it. This is the old Tony's by George location, from what I understand. Tony might still be working there with you a little bit at the time. Or George, rather. George might be there with you. But with that being said, Mr. President, I'm glad to see someone was able to fill the storefront, and I wish him the best of luck, and I move for approval on the paper.
Any other questions? Council Falco?
Thank you, Mr. President. One quick question. Is that 11 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week? Yes, it is. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Council Bears?
my question actually isn't for the petitioner. It's just that we asked the city administration, who provided the information that they could open before we.
Mr. Clerk, if you want to make that part of the report, Council Bears would like to know who provided the gentleman with the information that he could open before he got his common victualer's license.
Move approval.
Second.
On the motion by Council Scarpelli, seconded by Council Bears. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. Okay. Anything else while we're on the suspension? All right. On a motion by Vice President Knight to revert back to regular business. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. Motions, orders, and resolutions. 21413, offered by Council Marks. Be it resolved that the residential outside irrigation meter be discussed. Councilor Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was contacted recently by a local resident that was very interested in obtaining a second meter for outdoor activities, water meter. And after doing a little research, Mr. President, it was found out that only those that have an underground irrigation system are allowed to benefit from the second meter, which does not add on the added cost for sewer. And after looking at the actual application and reading the requirements by the city, Mr. President, tonight I'm going to respectfully ask that the Water and Sewer Commissioners meet again, Mr. President, to discuss opening up the second water meter to all residents. This irrigation program was established in 2010. And the first phase was to open it up to residential water meters strictly for underground irrigation. And at the time, it was stated, Mr. President, that this was going to be phase one of the program back in 2010. And here we are 11 years later, and there's never been another phase rolled out. So if you're a commercial property in the community, you are currently not eligible. And if you are a property owner that doesn't happen to have, like my property, I don't have an underground irrigation system, but I do use a hose, and sometimes I may do it by hand. Sometimes I may put out one of those little devices that, sprinkles water around. And like many of us, some people water their garden. Some people fill their pool up. And to me, the same principle applies. If that water is not finding its way back into the sewer system, then, the whole idea of setting this up was to give taxpayers a rate relief from using water outside of their home. And the whole intent was to provide that relief to those who do that, Mr. President. And I think expanding the program after 11 years, I think we have a good handle on how many people have taken advantage of this program, and look at the metrics regarding how this is working out, what has been the cost, because there is a cost to the, not only to the resident that's putting in a second meter, but there's also a cost to those who pay water and sewer in the community, because as we all know, Mr. President, when the water comes into the community, it's metered. So there's giant meters that show how much water is coming in. The MWRA assesses us through what's coming into the community. So they don't look and say, well, you're using the water outside, using it inside. The MWRA doesn't care. The city of Medford created that program, which allows us to give people, if you want to call it a reduction or abatement, on the sewer for consumption outside. And so there is a cost to all of us regarding this meter program. But I think this program, Mr. President, in all honesty, should be expanded because, to me, we should be looking at just people that have an underground irrigation system. We should be looking at anyone that uses outside water. And what I would like to do, Mr. President, I have a copy of the application. A lot of residents aren't even familiar that there's a program that exists, but there's irrigation meter application. The fee is $300 to fill out this fee. And then it goes on to give you the guidelines for the residential irrigation installation. And just for edification, Mr. President, I think people should be aware if they are interested. The city allows irrigation meters on in-ground irrigation systems for residential accounts only. Applications are taken in order they are received and will be handled by the Water Division at their discretion. All applicants must pass a pre-installation inspection and follow the guidelines for basic residential irrigation meter installation and requirements as stated on the application. So as you can see from this particular guideline, you have to have an underground irrigation system. The first requirement is a licensed plumber must obtain a permit at the building department in order to install this meter. So you can't install it yourself. A certified and tested backflow device must be furnished at the customer's expense. Customers must maintain the backflow prevention assembly on the irrigation system to ensure protection of the portable water supply with yearly inspections. Backflow tests are conducted by the engineering division, and the current fee for inspection is $60 annually. So there's a $300 charge for the meter itself, and then there's a $60 annual charge. So if you don't use a lot of outside water, you know, depending on what you're using, it may not be worthwhile from a financial standpoint to partake in this program. So you really have to sit down and figure out how much watering you're doing outside in order if this makes financial sense. All irrigation systems must comply with all local and state landscape irrigation regulations. All pipes from the service through the irrigation meter and 3 feet past the backflow preventer must be brass or copper material. No plastic, galvanized, or cast iron pipes are allowed. New and existing dwellings may split the service connection for irrigation with backflow device that is a T or a Y split to separate domestic and irrigation water. The City of Medford Metering Division is not responsible for pressure loss or consumption and volume issues resulting from the split connection. The meter and the reading device are issued by the city, and the price is included in the application fee. All pipes from the irrigation meter must be inspected to ensure that there are no cross connections between domestic and irrigation lines. You must install shut-off valves before and after the new irrigation meter. So that's pretty much what the rules and regulations are, Mr. President. I would respectfully ask, on behalf of the many hundreds, if not thousands, of residents that water their lawn, that tend to their gardens, that fill their pool, and use hose outside for a number of different reasons, that I respectfully ask the Water and Sewer Commission to expand the program currently to all residents, if need be, Mr. President, and also go into phase 2, which would allow for the commercial application of outside irrigation as well, Mr. President. So I respectfully put that in the form of a motion, and I thank you.
Council Marks, if you could amend that for me, if the Water Commission could look into the program that the city of Revere uses. They have, for their residents who not a big user, but they have a meter that goes onto the spigot. They charge them a nominal fee to rent for the season, and you put it on your outside spigot, and at the end of the season, you turn it in and you pay for the water that you use for your outside water. And it's it doesn't cost any money for any plumbing or any of that, it doesn't cost you $100 in plumbing fees to put it in, and they see, it seems to be working well, but say it's just it's a meter that goes onto your outside spigot.
Right.
And end of the season, you bring it back, you turn it back in, and they charge you for whatever water you use through that.
Mr. President, I'm not opposed to looking at that and amending the resolution. So I would respectfully add that in addition to my motion, that the Water and Sewer Commissioners look at the city of Revere and how they use an outside meter for residents that does not incur the cost of hiring a plumber as well as other associated costs. So I appreciate that.
It's a lot easier for the residents to use.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You can make it his, better than his. I can't make an amendment. Chair. So any further discussion? Okay, on the motion by Council Marks, seconded by Council Falco. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. 21414, offered by Councilor Marks. Be it resolved that the Medford Fire Deputy Chief of Operations Brian Cronin be congratulated on his retirement and for his commitment and dedication for serving the residents of Medford for over 40 years. Councilor Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today with all due respect and honor for one of Medford's finest. Brian Cronin, for anyone that knows Brian, has served this city with distinction for 42 years, Mr. President, over 4 decades of an impeccable record protecting the life and property of our citizens. You couldn't meet a kinder, gentler person, Mr. President. Everyone that I've spoken to that has seen this on the agenda, the first words out of their mouth were, "We're sad to see such a man of character leave." And I'm hoping, Mr. President, that he comes back in other capacities. We were just talking about, and I didn't mention this to Brian, but we were just talking about emergency preparedness and how that position for a number of years has been somewhat of a stipend side position that's gone unnoticed. And it's such an important role in this community. And respectfully, I'd love to see Brian come back as the emergency preparedness head in our community. But with that being said, Mr. President, Brian is retiring as the Deputy Chief of Operations, a very high post within the Medford Fire Department. Brian came to us September 13, 1979. He was appointed to the Medford Fire Department. June 27th, 1980, Brian received a special commendation from Chief Leo McCabe for actions at a water rescue incident at the Mystic Lakes on June 25th, 1980, under the direction of Lieutenant Charles Paris. September 22nd, 1981, Brian responded to a house fire at 69 Jerome Street as a member of Engine 2 under the direction of Captain Paul Giannetti, firefighter Joe Amato, and firefighter Brian Cronin, located and removed Mr. Edward Whitaker from a second bedroom after first isolating the fully involved bedroom by closing the door. For their actions that day, the crew of Engine 2, Captain Paul Giannetti, firefighter Joe Amato, and firefighter Brian Cronin were awarded the Firefighter of the Year award. May 3rd, 1987, promoted to lieutenant. October 22nd, 1988, Brian responded to a house fire at 20 Rockwell Ave. Under the direction of District Commander Donald McCarthy, the Ladder 2 crew of Lieutenant Cronin, firefighter Robert Booth, firefighter Alfred Magliari, and District Command Aide Robert Murray located and removed 2 residents from the involved second-floor bedroom. October 22nd, 2000, Department commendation from Chief Frank Gilberti Jr. for actions at the medical emergency. Engine 5 crew consisting of Lieutenant Cronin, firefighter Joe Frazier, and firefighter Rich Gents responded to a Dexter Street address on a report of a woman in labor. The woman was 34 weeks along in her pregnancy with her twins. Her water had broken and a breech delivery was imminent, with a single leg presentational and umbilical cord wrapped around the left hip and leg. The mother was placed in the delivery position and the right foot presented itself. The patient was allowed to push and the baby's torso delivered easily. The head was more serious situation and delivered with difficulty after some delay. The baby was suction dried but was lethargic with a heartbeat and a severe respiratory distress close to cardiac arrest. Stimulation and additional suctioning of the baby's airway made some improvement. The baby was resuscitated with a bag valve mask. With paramedics now on the scene, this was accomplished with the umbilical cord still attached, with all personnel working in very close quarters, and the second baby beginning to crown. After several minutes of manual resuscitation, the baby began to breathe spontaneously. The twin brother was delivered without incident. The emergency department doctor at the Brigham and Women's Hospital, where the mom and the twins were taken, told the parents, quote, "You are lucky those men knew what they were doing. Otherwise, you and the babies may not have survived," end of quote. Lieutenant Cronin praised his crew and the paramedics for their compassion and professionalism. Lieutenant Cronin, firefighter Frazier, firefighter Gents were awarded the IAFF Local 1032 Meritorious Service Medal. August 3rd, 2007, Department Commendation for actions at a fatal motor vehicle accident on Route 93 with multiple entrapments requiring the use of hydraulic rescue tool while under the direction of District Commander Jerry Irving. Firefighter Mike Carpenito, firefighter Mike Renara, firefighter Rick Wilson, firefighter Mike Endicott, firefighter Stephen Hughes, Lieutenant Brian Cronin would receive the IAFF Local 1032 Meritorious Service Medal. November 1st, 2017, promoted to temporary captain and assigned to the training division. March 23rd, 2018, promoted to permanent captain. September 7, 2018, promoted to permanent deputy chief and assigned to the administration as the chief of operations. Under the direction of Captain Pat Ripley, conducted first aid and CPR training for the department. Seeing the need for permanent EMS procurement officer, Lieutenant Cronin received permission from Chief Lawrence Sands to take on those duties. With direction from Chief and welcome assistance from the department members, improved EMS equipment and training shortly followed. Brian is a member of the Medford Fire Department Honor Guard, Secretary of the Medford Firefighters Relief Association from 2003 to present, and the Medford Firefighters Memorial Sunday Service Committee 2002 to present, which many members of this council, along with the public, were present to honor deceased firefighters, Mr. President. I personally want to thank all our brave firefighters, but in particular, Mr. President, the Deputy Captain of Operations, Deputy Chief Brian Cronin, who is not only a firefighter, Mr. President, he is a close friend to many, and he's going to be sorely missed, Mr. President. His professionalism, the way he carried himself, the way he made every firefighter, no matter what position he served, all the way up to Deputy Chief, Mr. President. He made every firefighter, whether you're on the job for one day or on it for 40 years, like himself, he respected and made them all feel welcome and at home. And truly, it's firefighters like Brian Cronin that make the family of firefighters what they are today. And I would ask that on behalf of this council, that we honor Brian by giving Brian a council commendation for his 42 years of dedicated service to the life and property of the Medford residents, and for conducting himself in a manner that we can all be proud of, Mr. President. I thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Marks. Councilor Falco.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Councilor Marks for bringing this resolution forward, and also thank Brian Cronin for his years of dedication. Over 40 years is quite an accomplishment, and as you heard from Councilor Marks, a very, very successful career. I want to thank him for his service to our community, and thank him for answering all the questions that we've had through the years. I know he's always been there to answer questions, and he's always done a great job organizing the annual firefighters event at Oak Grove Cemetery. So I want to thank Brian for his many years of service and wish him well in his retirement. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Knight.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you very much, and thank you, Councilor Marks, for putting this resolution on this evening. Brian's someone I've grown to know and respect over the years in public service, and he's someone that's going to be sorely missed. When you go down to the South Medford Fire Station, for example, and you talk about the EMS procurement, you'll see Brian's handiwork right there, where they've set up a whole entire room dedicated to the materials and supplies that they purchase for EMS and first response. Councilor Marks also highlighted Brian's work with the Honor Guard. And there hasn't been an event in this community that hasn't had the Medford Fire Department's Honor Guard participating in one way or another, giving back to the community. So with that being said, Mr. President, I can't thank Brian enough for his 4 decades of service. He's going to certainly be missed, and I wish him all the best of luck in his retirement.
Thank you. Councilor Morell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to thank Councilor Marks for bringing this forward and for also taking the time to read all those career highlights and accolades, which are much deserved. I haven't had the fortune of knowing Deputy Chief Cronin as long as others, but in my short time of knowing him, I found everything Councilor Marks said to be true, just be an incredibly kind, gracious, service-oriented person. And Medford has been lucky to have him for 40 years, and I thank him for his service for 40 years, and I wish him all the best in retirement.
Thank you. Councilor Scarpelli.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I think Council Marks for bringing this forward, and it speaks volumes the way everybody's talking about it. So all I can add is one thing I realized when I first joined the council and when I was coaching and we had issues and Mr. Cronin was involved. He is the fireman's fireman. I don't think I've met a fireman that loves being a fireman more than Deputy Chief Cronin. I think that, and you could see it with his efforts, not just with emergency situations, but just the way he carries himself. So he's a great role model for these new firefighters that are starting off, and he will be missed. So we wish him luck after 40 years of work in dedication to the city of Medford, and it is time to enjoy retirement, and he definitely did his service for the residents of the city of Medford. So thank you.
Councilor Bears.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank you, Councilor Marks, for bringing this forward, and all my fellow councilors for their kind words. It was really moving to hear from Brian at the memorial ceremony a couple Sundays ago. I know the introduction, I think you actually went through many of his awards and commendations that were mentioned in his introduction, but it was really clear to see the support and camaraderie he had with his fellow firefighters, which I think you can only gain through all the service that he's provided to our community. So thank you again for bringing this forward, and congratulations to Brian.
Thank you. And on behalf of myself, Brian is a true professional and a true gentleman. No matter when you see him, whenever you talk to him, he's just a great person. And Councilor Marks brought up his long record of accomplishments throughout the community, and our fire department is going to miss a gentleman like him that has been there for 4 decades of service. And I hope there's somebody that is able and has the qualifications to step into those shoes, because those are one big pair of shoes to fill. So thank you, man. And Councilor Marks, do you have a date on his retirement?
I want to say it's at the end of this month, but I don't have the exact date.
So you will invite him up here for accommodation?
If you'd like to come up, sure.
If you'd like to invite him up for accommodation, that'd be great.
Sure.
So on the motion by Councilor Marks, seconded by? Second by Councilor Falco. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. 2-1-415, offered by Vice President Knight and Councilor Marks. Be it so resolved that the Medford City Council recognize Maria Ionessa, owner and operator of Bella Capelli Salon, on the momentous occasion of the business 15th anniversary. Senior Councilor Marks.
Mr. President, at this time, I will defer to Councilor Knight, Vice President Knight.
Councilor Marks, thank you very much. And Mr. President, thank you. Just this past week, Bella Capelli celebrated their 50th anniversary. And Maria Ionesser is someone that I've known for a very long time, a high school classmate of mine, who's been a very successful business owner in this city now for a decade and a half. And I think that warrants a little bit of recognition, Mr. President. My wife has used their services on a number of occasions, and she comes back looking more and more beautiful each time. And I can't thank Maria and her staff enough for the work that they do down there. So with that being said, Mr. President, I would yield my time to Councilor Marks, but congratulations to Maria and her staff.
Thank you.
Capelli on,
Council Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Anyone that knows the Ionessa family know them as outstanding Medford residents, Mr. President, a family that's been involved in this community for decades, giving of themselves at all different levels, Mr. President. Maria has been a tremendous business owner in this community, giving back at many, many events. She is the first to step forward and make donations when necessary or when asked to go over and above the call of duty. Maria Ionesser is the first to volunteer, Mr. President. And I think that comes from her parents and the way she was brought up. If I'm not mistaken, I also believe she's a proud vocational. I believe she went to the cosmetology at the Medford Vocational Technical High School, Mr. President, where she learned her craft. And it's evident in the type of business that she runs and the product that she puts out, Mr. President. Anyone that comes out of there is coming out with a hairstyle that is second to none. And I just want to congratulate her on her 15 years and wish her another 50 years of success in our community.
Thank you, Councilor Marks. The chair recognizes Councilor Scarpelli.
Thank you. I just thank you for my fellow councils bringing this forward. We all know the Ionessa family, and when you talk about a Medford family and keeping their business in the community and thriving like it has, and what they're giving back to the community is a blessing, and we share those celebrations with them and congratulate them. Two things, though. I know that Councilor Knight's wife doesn't watch this, so it's impressive that he used such great compliments, even though she's not watching. And last but not least, they still couldn't do anything with my hairdo. So I've tried. If anybody knows a hair salon that can do anything with this, just let me know. So thank you, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes Councilor Falco.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to thank Councilor Marks and Councilor Knight for bringing this forward. And it's great to see someone that grew up in the community decide to open a business here in the community, and a successful business at that. So I want to wish them congratulations on their 50th anniversary, and also wish them well for a successful future. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilor Carviallo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I want to congratulate Maria. Like Councilor Falco said, she grew up in the community, went to school in the community, and chose to operate a business here. And I think Councilor Marks is right. She gets her roots from her mother and father, who are longtime residents here. And I just want to thank her for her commitment to the city of Medford, and congratulations, and hopefully another 15 more years of business here. But thank you.
On the motion,
Second.
by me, seconded by Councilor Falco. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Paper 21416, offered by President Caraviallo. Be it so resolved that the Medford City Council amend the current parking ordinance pertaining to private ways to allow resident-only parking and allow the police to enforce it. Councilor Caraviallo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, for the neighbors who live down by the lakes, Pine Ridge, Oak Ridge, Sagamore, Pitcher, that whole area down there, every weekend they get inundated with cars. I mean, not one or two cars, but hundreds of cars, that it's barely passable for people to get by there. And it's been going on for many years, but it seems over the last couple of years, it's gotten a lot worse than it has. And it's not so much but the parking, but it's what's happening when people leave. They're leaving trash in people's yards. They're leaving trash all over the parkway. And, diapers and everything. It's not fair to these people. And, it's not just the residents of that end, but it's also the residents that live up by the Fells, on Governor's Ave. Every weekend, they're inundated with the cars and people from, going into the Fells with bikes and everything. And, it's, I guess that's the price we pay for having something as popular as the lake and the fells. But going back down to the lakes and down that area, the lower lake is not supposed to be for swimming or anything. And I think at this point, we need to reach out to Representative Gabelli to have the environmental police come down there in the weekends to start patrolling that area and make them not gonna say, you want to use the beach, go to the beach area. But every year there's an accident up there. If you go through the woods, it's littered with cans and toilet paper and diapers. It's really a mess. And I had the opportunity to drive down there to 5:30 on Monday morning. The whole stretch of that Mystic Valley Parkway was just littered with cases of beer and bags of trash or anything. It's really a shame. But aside from that, we've had meetings down there with the residents, the mayor, the police, and I can't seem to come up with a solution. Chief doesn't want to do anything. They won't ticket and tow because there's no signs posted, and we don't have an ordinance to allow us to do that. So after the last meeting we had last week, it was suggested that the city council have the solicitor draw up language to amend the current private way parking ordinance they're having. According to the Kim, it's not that big of a deal. 2 or 3 sentences get added on to that ordinance, and if we can get it, hopefully get it out this week and get it back soon before the summer break, give these people that live in these neighborhoods some much needed help. Like I say, because it's not fair to them every Saturday and Sunday that they had to, you drive through the Winchester end, there's not a car parked on that over there. And it's a shame that there's not more parking down that way. The DCR has land to maybe put some more parking down there, and maybe they should do that at some point. But like I said, it's just not fair that every week these residents have to suffer down there. And I'm tired of going down there when I'm getting the calls and being a policeman for them. And so again, I asked my fellow councilors to support this, and I think there's some people here that may want to speak on that.
Chair recognizes Council Scott Pelley.
Thank you, Council President Carviallo, for bringing this up. I know that I've talked to a few neighbors, and they're appalled, and I think that changing this ordinance might help. But I know that we should look into, I know Council Marks has brought this up for years, looking at our private ways in general in our community and the lack of funding we're losing because they're not being charged to our roads and streets here for federal reimbursement. So I think that it's important that maybe we call for either a subcommittee or committee of the whole soon to visit this ordinance in general and look at the negatives of having that in place and trying to weigh the pros and cons. And I think that might be the beginning, but I think that this has to be something that we reach out to the director of DCR as well. And if we can't send him, I don't know who it is, they change him every month, but send out communications to the DCR director that enlightens them of what's going on in that area, because it's obviously being used for recreational purposes. And if those, cars that are coming and families that are showing up and those parties that are throwing in our residential neighborhoods, if they're giving different outlets and different areas where they are approved to recreate and we can help them with that, that might be something we can move them along. But I think something has to be done because the neighborhood is feeling it. I know that some of the music and the noise and heard gunshots. One person told me, I mean, it sounds like it's like the OK Corral down there, and it's something that we really have to stand up. I know that Councilor Carviallo has been the active de facto sheriff and going down there, but it shouldn't be a city councilor that's going down to support and help our neighbors in that area. I think that we have to really get our state delegates involved and other state agencies to get involved to make sure that we find some solutions to move these groups out of there, because it's really deteriorating that neighborhood. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilor Falco.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank President Carviallo for bringing this forward tonight. I have received calls regarding this issue, and this needs to be addressed. It's long overdue. I know Councilor Carviallo mentioned previously there was a meeting, I think, that the administration held, and I know that I think it was sponsored by the administration. We weren't invited to the meeting. I wish I knew about it. I would have loved to have been there, but we weren't invited to it. But this is an issue that needs to be addressed. You know, there are many quality of life issues here with regard to noise, safety. When you talk about, you know, gunshots, I've heard about drug use. I've heard about trash, grills, the possibility of fire, people swimming where they're not supposed to be swimming. These are quality of life issues that are impacting residents, and the residents should not have to deal with this. Not only the quality of life issues, these are public health issues. The people going to the bathroom in the woods, from what I hear, this is just unacceptable. It needs to be dealt with. The administration needs to, help out with either calling a state delegation or calling the environmental police or the state police at the very least. I'd like to amend the resolution to add that the state police step up their patrols on the weekends and make sure that this is dealt with immediately. I think as far as the ordinance being adjusted to allow resident-only parking and allow the police to enforce it, I fully support that. I think it'd be nice to discuss it, as Councilor Scarpelli said, just to see if there's any additional safeguards that we can place in this. But this needs to be dealt with. It's long overdue. And like I said previously, the residents should not have to deal with this. So I second the resolution that was offered by President Carviallo. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilor Morell.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, President Caravello, for bringing this forward. As Councilor Falco mentioned, there's a number of issues going on here. I have great concern with the public safety issues and public health between the trash and the swimming and the open fires. I've been reaching out to DCR probably as long as I've lived here about the trash in that area. It seems they have a carry in, carry out policy, which essentially in practice is just carry in, leave wherever you can find it in bags, wherever else. So that's a major issue, and I would love to have our state delegation help and see what we can do there, because you can see it with your own eyes. This isn't something that can be ignored. If anyone from DCR ever drives by, they can see all the challenges that are faced, public health, public safety, and otherwise. I do have concerns just about the private ways as far as enforcement. It's my understanding by state statute that because these aren't accepted as public ways, we can't use city money for the police to enforce parking on that. So, I mean, I support Councilor Scarpelli as far as moving to a committee of the whole and just exploring this. I would be interested in, because, the ideal way to do this is these streets become accepted as public ways. If we could get just insight from the city engineer, the traffic engineer, for the process of accepting these private ways as public ways so we can enforce them as such. And if there's a priority list or, any process that exists already for moving a number of these private ways that have a number of issues and accepting them as public ways. And I do just want to read also from the Commission on Parking and Policy and Enforcement. They did address this issue, and one of their recommendations was to consider a program where residents of private ways can enforce parking by towing, which is allowable by the state statute. And this program would allow residents of private ways to file a permit notifying the city of the preferred tow company for that private way to tow away vehicles parked illegally on that private way. And I guess this is a program that's done in Somerville. Medford isn't alone in having private ways, but we are specific to having very desirable private ways for parking for a number of resources within the city. So I would love to have that committee of the whole to really talk this through and address this. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilor Bears.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to my fellow councilors. I hear what Councilor Morell is saying about the legal issue, so I would like Solicitor Scanlon to confirm that we are allowed to take this short-term step. It sounds like she thinks we are, which is good. I was driving through there on a Saturday recently, and it is bonkers. I mean, there are so many people down there, more than I've ever seen before, and you can really tell because there are multiple ice cream trucks up at Shannon Beach, and they're really taking advantage of it too. It took me 10, 15 minutes to get from the Circle at High Street up into Winchester. So it's a huge volume of people up there every weekend. I think what everyone has said is accurate. The piece that I really just want to make sure we take on is, even if we are able to implement this short-term solution, we can't forget the long-term solution and really addressing this larger issue of private ways. Because at the end of the day, what Councilor Scarpelli said is correct. We're going to end up spending city resources on enforcing this issue, but not getting the money from Chapter 90, not getting the money back for the large volume of private ways that we have. So certainly I support whatever we can do to address this immediately. It seems like the situation is way out of hand and it got that way pretty quickly. But I agree with Councilor Morell. We have to have some sort of committee of the whole on the long-term situation with private ways in our community as well. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Chair recognizes Councilor Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank President Caviello for putting this on the agenda. I come from a little different train of thought, Mr. President. These are method streets. And the fact that it may be a private way, in my opinion, has zero bearing on the responsibility of the city to make sure public nuisance and public safety issues are not addressed. I think it's a cop-out, to be quite honest with you. 40% of our 719 streets in this community are private way. So what are we saying? 40% of our streets we can't enforce on. It's ridiculous. And I've been talking about this issue for years. No one wants to discuss it. But it is an issue, Mr. President. And as far as I'm concerned, if I was the CEO, which would have happened where there would have been signs posted all in those streets stating resident only. And I would have had the tow trucks out there and the cops out there ticketing immediately and worry about it after the fact. Because what we're doing is providing parking for people that want to use the DCR land. So we essentially become the parking lot. DCR's not providing parking, we are. And it's a cop-out to say, well, it's a private road. What benefit, ask any of the neighbors, what benefit do you have living on a private road? You have zero benefit. You pay the same tax as everyone else and you get zero benefit. So if they're unable to give tickets on a private road, why are we plowing? That's city money, that's city resources. We're allowed to plow? To me, that has zero bearing. And if there was leadership in the community, they would have acted immediately, Mr. President. And it's no different as what's happening at the top of Governor's Ave. It's no difference. And really, it upsets me because I think the city should be the first to step up. Worry about the consequences after the fact. Send the message, we're not going to tolerate it. We're not going to allow you to invade our neighborhoods. We're not going to allow you to have cookouts in front of someone's home and leave debris behind. We're not going to allow you to change out of your bathing suit in front of our home. We're not going to allow public drinking. That's the message that has to be sent, not that we're worried if we give a ticket out because, oh, it's a private way. That's baloney. That's absolute baloney. And to hide behind that, Mr. President, is shirking your duties, as far as I'm concerned. And these residents, they're right. They've been going through this for years. For years. And if it takes an ordinance change, fine. I don't know if that's going to do it all, Mr. President. We have a serious issue with, over the years, over the last 50, 60, 70 years, when this city was being built up and so forth, that the city at the time allowed them to make private ways, Mr. President, because they didn't want to go through the acceptance process to accept the street. And it was done for a number of reasons, because some of these streets, Mr. President, didn't have the proper infrastructure. You go up the heights, a lot of them didn't have the proper drainage. And they tapped into the sewer system where they shouldn't have been. So a lot of these roads were created as paper roads and private ways because the city wasn't, for years, didn't really follow through on this, Mr. President. There's no reason why. If a road still wants to be a private way, fine. But we should send out a survey to everyone on private ways right now and ask them, would you like to change over? And for those that want to change over, we should move immediately to change over, Mr. President. There's a process. For those that want to keep it private, fine. But everyone should be receiving the same city services. You pay the same taxes, and police enforcement is a city service. Plowing is a city service. Your sidewalk being done is a city service. Your tree being trimmed is a city service. And there's no reason why 269 roads, which are thousands of homes and tens of thousands of residents, have to say, well, I live on a private way. I'm not entitled to the same enforcement or the same upkeep on my street. It's ridiculous. It really is. So I support the president, Mr. President. I would ask that immediately enforcement take place. And I know that request already happened through a neighborhood meeting, and I guess those wooden sawhorses were broken in half and people tossed them aside. But we need true enforcement there. And if we need to station someone there, Mr. President, have a police officer stationed in that area, then so be it. This is not Mayberry. It's a city of 60,000 people, 7 square miles, $190 million budget. And we can't tell residents that are paying tens of thousands of dollars in taxes, sorry, you live on a private website. We'd love to help you out, but we can't do it. You're on a private road. Unacceptable. Thank you, Mr. President, for bringing this issue up.
Chair recognizes Councilor Moreau.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I just want to note that I believe our current ordinance and our number of legal cases at the state level, enforcement related to public safety is allowable and encouraged. And there's a number of reasons related to public safety that the police can enforce on private ways. So I think to Councilor Bear's point, there may be something easy we can do, the city solicitor can help us out with, because this is a public safety issue. Thank you.
I do believe there's some towing went on a couple weeks ago because of that. Councilor Carviallo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Council Marks is right. It's a cop-out, because I've been down there with the police, and they're saying, I was there last Sunday with Officer McGilvery, and as fast as cars were pulling out, he's telling them not to pull in there, saying, we can park here all we want. And what the biggest issue is, there's no posted signs on there. But I agree with Council Marks. Tow all the cars out of there. We'll deal with it later. Because again, these aren't Medford residents' cars that you're towing. They're all out of city and out of state plates there. I was there last Sunday in front of a neighbor's house. A pickup truck pulls up with 6 kayaks. I says, well, what are you doing? He says, I'm parking my truck here. He says, it's a private property. I says, I'm telling you, your car's not going to be here when you come back. I said, I don't care. Meanwhile, the tow trucks were there. The police were there, and Officer McGilvery standing there again. I've been down there multiple Saturdays and Sundays with the police standing there, not able to do anything because they'll get the call from whoever's in charge that day, leave, nothing we can do, and run. Tow the cars out of there. You see how fast the people won't be back there the following week. But one of the problems is it's not posted, so we can't enforce anything that's not posted. Towing companies said they'd be more than happy to give you all the signs you want to put up there. But again, that's part of the ordinance is it's going to be posted. Get some signs up there quickly. Help these people out now, not at the end of the summer when it's too late. So,
Point of information, Mr. President.
Councilor Marks.
So we have outside construction companies come into our community, post their own little handmade signs all over the neighborhoods, no parking or you'll be towed. But the city of Medford can't do that to help residents. It makes no sense, Mr. President. We allow outside utility companies to come in and invade our city and post these signs, but we can't do it. That should happen overnight. I agree with you, Mr. President. That should happen overnight, Mr. President. It makes no sense at all. We really need answers on this.
Point of information.
Point of information, Councilor Scarpelli.
I appreciate everybody's comments. I think that we had an issue on Aquavia Road just recently during the pandemic where cars were parking from the Fells and parking in the neighborhood. And the temporary signs that were put out there with the horses made it reasonable for towing. So, and I think they just did it just for the weekends because that's when the traffic area really started. No different than what we're seeing in this area. So I can't see why we asked the chief and the traffic engineer to put out temporary signs in these areas on Friday afternoons through Sunday, so this could be policed properly. I don't think we have to wait for a sign to be erected.
Put
I think
information,
that-
Council Scarpelli.
If you can.
We've been down there numerous times and with the police, the traffic engineer, and everybody, instead of offering solutions, they're offering excuses. And that's really all it's doing. Again,
We need to demand this from the chief, the traffic engineer, and the mayor's office, that this is what's being done in other neighborhoods and it's worked. So I'm a little confused with so I think that, we make a motion that, as part of the report, that we ask for the temporary signs to be erected by DPW, from the traffic department on Friday evenings and then taken down on Sundays. And I believe that would allow the police the leverage to tow, because I know it's not the officers on the streets. They want to do it.
yeah,
It's not them. They're getting it from higher up. So I think we need to get really more clarity right now from the chief and get this taken care of, because, until someone drowns out there and it's one of our firefighters that are going out there, or one of our police officers are going out there and jumping in the lake, trying to help a family that shouldn't have been out there, and they lose their lives, I think that's when we're going to see some movement, and that's not what we all want to see. So I think we need to move on that immediately. So thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilor Falco.
Thank you, Mr. President. And through you to President Caraviallo. So you were at the meeting, and maybe it's the residents that may want.
some of the residents were there.
Okay, so if residents want to speak, I'd love to get their perspective. But, so when you were at the meeting, could you tell us, did the administration promise any type of deliverables as to what they were going to do? Or?
Again, they offered, solutions about, we need to change this, we need to change things, but again,
No timetables or
no,
anything?
there was no timetable. Again, the traffic engineer was there, a representative from the police department there. Again, every time we thought of a solution, for an immediate action, we can't do that, can't do that. We have to do it. Again, Council Marks is right. Put the signs up there now. Quick, again, like he says, construction guys go out there, they put signs up there, and they ticket and tow.
Yeah.
You can put the signs up there for at least for the season, and ticket and tow. Man, you don't have to go for a big expense. Again, the tow company said they would give you all the signs you want to put up there, so when your car got towed, where they were going. Again, we're looking for immediate relief. And listen, Councilman Morales right. We do need a long-term solution for this. But in the meantime, these people need help on the weekends. They can't go out of the house. And Councilman Morales says, you've got the carry-out stuff. Yeah, they carry it out and leaving it in front of their house. That's what they're doing with it. They are taking the carry-out there, but they're leaving it in our streets now. And again, these people need relief now, not in August and September when it's going to be gone. You go on the Winchester side, there's no cars parked by their end of the beach because they put up signs, nobody parks there, they tow them away. It's car there, it's gone immediately. Again, put the signs up, not that big of a deal. And you say it can be done as early as this weekend. We'll worry about the consequences at a later date while this is working. We'll put the signs up, get it done. Not that big. And Mr. President, if you also please amend it that this be sent to the solicitor immediately, and that that the administration contact the environmental police. And I can't say that the state police are down there. They probably tow 200 cars every Saturday and Sunday. They're down there. They're doing their best just to keep up with the parking down there. So again, let's get this done quick. These people need help. It's just the beginning of the summer. It's only going to get worse.
No, I want to thank Councilor Caraviallo. I agree 100%. I mean, it's not even July yet.
Right.
It's still another 8 to 10 weeks of summer.
That's right.
This needs to be dealt with right away. So I would agree with my
We
council
need
colleagues.
excuses. I mean, we don't need excuses. We need action.
Correct. I'd love to hear from some of the residents if you want to speak about it. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Mr. D'Antonio from Yale Street. Name and address for the record, please, sir.
Anthony D'Antonio, 24 Hicks Avenue, South Medford. I live down the other end. However, I used to go up on the weekends to enjoy a sandwich or whatever, walk around that little area near Sandy Beach, or it used to be Sandy Beach, and it's disgusting. I've seen things you can't believe. I wish we could have somebody in the Board of Health go down there. These people should be ticketed. They're dumping diapers in the water. Grown men defecating in the water, all right? It's true. You can't get anywhere. And these people that go down there, God bless them, there's a lot of good families, but they're not all good people that go there. Believe me when I tell you. I don't know how these residents put up with it. I'd go out of my mind, to be honest with you. So they do need help. You got to find a way to do it and help them. I mean, I don't go there anymore. It's not enjoyable, you know? So they need the help. Let's get going here. So thank you.
Name and address for the record, please.
Tracy Chapman. I live at 1454 Mystic Valley Parkway, and I've lived there for a long time, roughly 25 years, and I've really seen this whole situation evolve. I mean, it's been a problem for many years, but most of the cars used to be up towards Sandy Beach, but now they've really gravitated down right in front of my house, actually. I mean, literally in front of my house, in front of Bill's house. And trash is left all over the place. I mean, I didn't grow up that way, you know. I respect people who want to hang out in the woods or have a picnic with their family or whatever, but, you know, I would literally carry out, or even when I was smoking cigarettes, I would butt them out and stick them in my pocket. I wouldn't even leave that on the ground, and even in my 20s, and it's very, very different now. I took pictures just today, just walking across the street, and I know most of you will not be able to see this, so I will describe it. So I walked across my street. Hang on one second. And this is, people bagged their trash. They did bag it. I was like, oh, well, at least they bagged it. But they don't even put it on the side of the road where somebody like could see it, could like pick it up and see it, you know, like a garbage collector or something. Not like they do that, but they put it back in the woods. So they bagged the trash and then threw it back into the woods. So there are these like 5 giant trash bags in there. And as soon as you cross the street and you start walking the path, you see this. And at the telephone pole, there's another picture on there that is like a market basket bag with trash falling out of it. So that's just today, one day. And had I known I was going to be here tonight, which I didn't at the time, I would have taken a lot more pictures. I'd have gone inside that woods and taken pictures for all of you to see. But you know, it's a sad state of affairs, and there are health issues, and people come very early because they want to park. Okay, where do they go to the bathroom, right? You know, they're parked there all day long. Now, come on, and they're drinking and eating and cooking and grilling, and you go back near where the river meets the lower lake, and that whole area is like smashed bottles, so there's glass everywhere. My neighbor who walks her dog is afraid that her dog's going to get cut on the glass that's out there. So there's a lot of problems, and that's just talking about the lower Mystic Lake. One other thing I wanted to throw out is for a number of years now, I have seen the crew from the prisons come in, but they only clean the upper lake. Why is that? That's a state-related issue. I pay taxes like the Winchester people pay taxes, but they stop where the road is to the dam. And I saw that little truck with the guys in their orange suits, and I'm glad they're using them to do this. I think it's good for those guys. I think it's good for the community. But I said, how come you don't come down to the lower lake? Because there's been trash there for years and the neighbors have been picking it up. We have a lot of people in our neighborhood who walk with a trash bag in their hand, and as they're walking, they put trash in the bag. But I asked, why didn't the prison guys come down to the lower lake and do that? Nobody has the answer to that. So there's a lot of inequities that I see happening between what happens in the Winchester end and what happens in the Medford end, including the curbing of the side, the road there where they put the nice curbing in, including the lights they put up. Why does it stop at Medford? I don't get that. I mean, maybe you guys understand that. But just to speak to the private road thing as well, I live on a private road. It looks like Beirut after the bombings. That's what it looks like. There are holes everywhere. The city comes in and they patch the holes every year because the plows get under the lip of those patches. They end up on my lawn. That's where that tar ends up. And we're cleaning it out of our banks for the whole season. But that's what they come in. They come in and just do a patch job, just do a patch job. We were so hoping when the gas company came in recently and put in all the new gas lines that maybe they would pave that road. And it's not a private road. It's the only way you can access Pitcher Avenue is by going on Lakeview. You can't access it any other way. So if it's private, technically, people on Pitcher should not be using it. I guess that's the way I look at it. I don't care that they use it. I want the road paved. So I guess I have a lot of issues, but I'm deciding, I don't come to many of these meetings, I'm throwing them all out there today, but the paving of the road is a huge one for me. And if making it public instead of private is the way to go to get the road paved, I'm all for it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sherman. Name and address for the record, please, sir.
Hi, my name's Bill Darnell. I live at 1466 Mystic Valley Parkway. And I've lived there for 22 years now, and the last couple of years have definitely gotten 100 times worse. I hope that you can do the ticketing and the towing, but part of the problem, I think, might be that people, I'm also a board member of the Medford Boat Club, and the parking, they've been there since 1898, and they've always used the parking area by the Tufts Boathouse. And to find a parking spot there today on the weekends is, you're lucky if you can drive in and get out again. So the parking is really getting bad for them as well. So they ended up parking in the neighborhoods, members of the boat club, Medford residents. So we kind of, as a member of the Medford Boat Club, we're like, well, now we're going to get screwed if we're getting towed, if you're not a resident of that street and you're getting towed. So I don't know if there's a way to look at someone with a Medford Boat Club sticker on the side streets and give them a little break, because it's tough for everybody. And but we definitely want to see this problem cleaned up. It's terrible. I walk my dog across the street, and I'm afraid that he's going to cut his paws. Yeah, you see glass everywhere, toilet paper, all kinds of trash, and it's something has to be done, and I'm glad you're looking into it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. President.
Chair recognizes Councilor Carviallo.
I'll yield to the gentleman.
My name is Richard Schultz, and I live at 1454 Mystic Valley Parkway, which is right on the corner of Lakeview, which is a private way, and Mystic Valley, and this is my wife. So if I move my car on a Sunday and I park on Lakeview, I have to put a trash can in the spot where when I come back, I won't have a parking space. And that is every Sunday. Additionally, I have had situations where I've said something to someone about parking on Lakeview and I get an earful from them. They're belligerent. Lakeview, when you cross the parkway, it leads to a path that takes you right down to where the river meets the lake. And you can see hundreds of people going down there on a weekend, carrying everything imaginable. And as you've heard, they leave all their trash behind. They defecate in the woods, and they have no respect for the environment. Now, that area is not supposed to be for swimming and picnicking, and I don't understand why it isn't posted in that way, so that they would know, people would know that you have to go to the designated areas. This has become increasingly a big problem. In front of our house, the front of our house is quite long. We have an old Victorian house. We pay high taxes. And on Sundays, there's bumper to bumper in front of my house, people yelling, especially when they come back, making noise. You can't sit on your porch and have your meal. We have to sit in the back porch to do that. I'm glad that you're looking into this, but we need action. And we don't need to deal, I don't need to deal with belligerency. I don't need to deal with having to put a trash can in my parking space so that if I go out, get some groceries, I can't find any place to park in my neighborhood. And the final thing I would add, and I said it before, we have a turn-of-the-century Victorian. We pay a lot of taxes. That house is valuated high. We're not getting services for it.
Thank you, sir. Chair recognizes Councilor Carviallo.
Thank you, Richard, for bringing that point up. He's right. The neighbors shouldn't be down there fighting people. I mean, I've been down there, I've argued with people. I see the other neighbors arguing with people, and they just don't care. Again, a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to go with Representative Garbely on a walkthrough of the lower lakes. The lower end there, what they're talking about, there's makeshift bathrooms with toilet paper dispensers hanging on the trees. I mean, diapers everywhere, but it's just utter filth. And she's right. I don't know why they'll clean the upper part. They won't come down and clean the lower part. It's not fair. And I asked for immediate action on this as soon as possible to help these people out before the summer even starts.
On the Chair recognizes Councilor Falco.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I may, and the residents bring up a good point, if we could get a report back or maybe some answers from Representative Garbally as to why is the upper lake treated differently from the lower lake with regard to cleanliness and the state being proactive with regard to cleaning that area. There must be a reason, or maybe it's just being overlooked, but it needs to be addressed. It's not fair that only one section is getting cleaned, but the rest they just don't care about. So if we can get a report back from that, I'd greatly appreciate it. So if I can make that as an amendment, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Chair recognizes Councilor Scarpelli.
Again, I wasn't clear enough, but my comments earlier is for a motion that we call for a meeting and bring in the stakeholders. So if we can, one of the upcoming meetings, I know we're finalizing the budget, but calling for a meeting with our state delegates, a representative from the DCR, even somebody from the sheriff's office to answer these questions directly, as well as the traffic engineer and the police chief for the traffic department. Because again, I appreciate that that Councilor Carviallo went out to this meeting, and when I was told it wasn't a big deal. It was just neighbors that were concerned and they were trying to bring it together. But I think this has to be some answers, and there have to be people sitting across the table to answer those questions. So if I can call that as a motion to call for an immediate meeting, not to say that we shouldn't try to do something this weekend, but what I'm saying is, get some resolution quickly. And I know that Mr. Darnell brings up a good point. Why penalize Medford residents? When from what I've heard, it's 99% of non-resident people that are just looking in that area because it is a beautiful area. If you want it, spend millions of dollars and buy a huge colonial on the corner, and they can have those rights. But I just want to make sure that's on the record. Thank you.
On the motion of Councilor Carviallo, seconded by Councilor Scarpelli, as amended by Councilors Carviallo, Scarpelli, Falco, Morel, Bears, Marks, Scarpelli, Carviallo, Falco, Scarpelli. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Paper 21417, offered by Councilors Bears and Morel. Be it resolved, the Medford City Council, be it resolved by the Medford City Council that the city administration work with the Medford Public Schools to issue a communication regarding the expanded child tax credit that will provide a maximum of $300 per month for each child under the age of 6 and $250 per month for each child between the ages of 6 and 17, for which I have 2. Counselor Bears.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the American Rescue Plan Act, the federal government significantly expanded the child tax credit for families and specifically for children in providing, additional resources for all of the different costs that a child has. This is a great expanded benefit. It's estimated that it'll significantly help millions of families across the country. And right here in Medford, I'm sure thousands of families. However, not a lot of people are fully aware that this benefit has passed and may not be taking advantage of it. So the intent of this resolution is that the city administration work with the public schools, and I would like to amend this to include the Medford Family Network, to just notify families that this is an option, that these funds are out there and that they can help families and children across the city do better. So I turn it over to Councilor Morell, who co-sponsored this.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, Councilor Bears mostly covered it. So this was actually, there was an article about this recently about, those most likely to benefit from this are probably largely unaware of the program, and some 53% of people may not know about this tax credit. So a resident brought this to our attention. So just getting this out there, and also it may be beneficial, just as a side comment, the Board of Health, I know, is working really hard as far as SNAP-GAP and identifying people who are not enrolling in benefits that they are eligible for. So this seems like something similar to that. Perhaps the schools could reach out to the Board of Health to see how they're identifying and reaching out to people to ensure that they are enrolling in programs that they are eligible for. So move approval.
Second.
On the motion, and Councilman Bears and Morell, seconded by Councilman Falco. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Medford Family Network for the reference to supporting the programming of the Medford Family Network during COVID-19 pandemic. Councilor Falco.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to congratulate the Friends of the Medford Family Network for their efforts during the pandemic. They had to adjust, and they had to, usually they have a full range of fundraising activities that benefit the Medford Family Network, and during the pandemic, they were limited. But they adjusted and they moved forward, and they had a lot of virtual events, virtual trivia nights. I believe it was a virtual ice cream social, and they successfully raised money to make sure that there was programming moving forward all the time, and it's always it's free programming. So I just wanted to thank them for their effort and constantly raising money and constantly being active in our community to ensure that there is always free programming for the Medford Family Network. And I want to congratulate them, and I invite them down to receive council commendation. So thank you.
Thank you. And if I could say, thank you, Councilor Falco, for bringing this forward. Maria and her group, a tremendous group of people. COVID or not, they haven't missed a beat on anything. They continue to provide food, clothing, and everything for members of the community who really need it. So they didn't need the COVID to slow them down. They only stepped up.
Correct.
So again, I want to thank them. And in fact, Councilor Falco and I talked last night as I was going through the school budget. I was kind of shocked at the amount of compensation Marie Cassidy receives for the tremendous amount of work. And I say, I happened to call Councilor Falco last night and asked him if that was the correct number, because I was just like kind of taken back with. We can't pay Marie and her staff enough money for the amount of work they do. So again, I want to thank Councilor Falco for bringing that up. So on the motion by Councilor Falco, seconded by Councilor Bears. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
Mr. President,
Councilor Marks.
move suspension of the rules to take public participation, Mr. President.
On the motion by Councilor Marks, the suspension to take public participation, seconded by seconded by Council Scarpelli. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Public participation. We have hold on. We have Anita D'Antonio on the agenda. If I can find her paper here. She was first. She sent in. Mr. Clerk, do you have Anita's paper? Hold on a second. Oh, okay. Okay. Public position, Anita D'Antonio, 14 Yale Street, Medford, Mass. Anita D'Antonio would like the opportunity to speak regarding the renaming of the Columbus School and the process of the renaming of the school. Good evening, Anita. Name and address of the record,
Good
please.
evening. Thank you. Anita D'Antonio, 14 Yale Street, Medford. Mr. President, members of the City Council, bear with me. I'm going to read a statement rather than ad lib it tonight. Let me say this is not a rehash or a relitigation of this issue, because the issue was not hashed or litigated in the first place. We were in the midst of a pandemic, and this issue was given a priority that seemed to surpass the importance of getting children back into classrooms. If that's not the case, it certainly left that impression. From the outset, the movement to remove the Columbus name and the renaming process have been divisive, yet ultimately revealing. Columbus is but one of the villains du jour in the midst of our own cultural revolution in Medford, served up by a national contagion. And so a name change was put on the agenda. There was no room for argument or discussion when it came to Columbus, not even for a professor emerita from Stanford University in the Department of Cultural and Social Anthropology for nearly 20 years, Carol Delaney, PhD, author of Columbus and the Quest for Jerusalem, and who I believe appeared before the school committee by Zoom and got a less than indifferent reception. Didn't fit the narrative. Primary sources. Howard Zinn said so, and the acolytes followed. And who passed the baton to Zinn? In an article written by Jennifer Braceras entitled The Intellectual Roots of the War Against Columbus, she states, and I quote, "The war against Columbus is cloaked in the lexicon of diversity and the rhetoric of inclusion, but what many of its foot soldiers don't realize is that in fact it has its intellectual roots in the ideologies of Marxism and white supremacy," unquote. Marx reviled Columbus because he saw him as the godfather of capitalism. The KKK detested Columbus because of his association with Catholicism. Strange bedfellows with a common purpose. There is no purity with regard to Columbus arguments pro or con, but wouldn't it have been a great learning experience for young minds and all of us to do what great educators do, encourage discussion, thought, challenge viewpoints, argue, listen to different opinions, and in the end, acquire knowledge. This is not the example that was set by some members of the school committee. Minds were made up long before it was put on the agenda. For some individuals on the school committee, the message seemed to be, if we want your opinion, we'll give it to you. Objectivity was non-existent, notwithstanding the effort to appear otherwise. In the removal of the name, the selection of a new name, and the final vote itself. We were admonished again and again that this was all done in the name of equity, justice, wonderful positive change, signaling how loving, tolerant, open, and welcoming we are as a city. And, by the way, Columbus was evil, and his mere name traumatizes children. So what did this process reveal to me? Well, it exposed some virulent bigotry and bias directed toward those who did not want the name change, but then moved on to support a particular nominee to replace the name Columbus. That nominee's reputation was even besmirched, disgraceful. I learned that what is old is new again, ethnic bigotry, whether it's 1921 or 2021, again, specifically directed at Americans of Italian descent. Some of us were even more special. We were old and/or lifelong residents. There was even an attempt to stop speakers from stating they were lifelong residents. Fortunately, the attempt failed. But what does it say about a school committee member who would try to stifle free speech that way? We are, according to one voice, the most racist, cruel, hateful humans in Medford, white supremacists, right-wingers, false narrative bearers, white self-admitted Italian Americans who may have cheated by simply voting for our choice of nominee. And last but not least, the worst of the worst. If this is the change, if this is the progress, if this is what passes for making Medford a loving and welcoming and tolerant community, we are failing miserably. I will not stand by and allow anyone to violate or smear the character of my family, my parents, my grandparents, because we happen to be of Italian descent. I condemn those who prioritize their bigotries, cloak them in virtue signaling, trading one bigotry for another, thinking they have the high moral ground and feeling justified in doing so. Those who bellow about bullying and marginalizing have become the bullies, the marginalizers, and now even the new colonizers. I want to see a city that can grow positively for all. There are those who see a city that won't be right until it's made in their image, no matter how long or how briefly they have lived here. That is what we just experienced during the Columbus School renaming, and it will not end there. There are those who will adopt another city's or state's crises and try to include Medford in the same crisis. That is not an example of injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. That is destroying a city's character and uniqueness and driving it to a divisive and dead end. Finally, I would ask this city council to vigorously condemn bigotry, and specifically the bigotry that has been directed to those of Italian descent. Thank you so much for this time.
Thank you. Any further public discussion? And any other subjects? No more further, any more? Good evening. Name and address of the record, please.
Good evening. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Council President Carviello. Tony Puccio, 11 Tainted Street, Medford, Mass. 42-year resident. Thank you. I just really, all I wanted to say was I can't say anything more than what Ms. D'Antonio has already stated. Thank you. I wanted to thank her for coming up and speaking on behalf of several residents in Medford. There's a lot of people who are in favor of the change of the school, and I understand that, I accept that. But for every person that I hear about that is in favor, there are many that are not as vocal, that approach me and thank me, and people like Anita and other people who continue this. I don't want to say resistance because it's really not a fight of resistance, but it has to be made known that there are feelings that have been hurt, as well as not just feelings, but there's just not, people's backgrounds feel, it feels like they were threatened, and it can't continue. So I would hope, and I echo what Anita says, that this council would take it upon themselves to condemn these acts of not necessarily the changing of the schools acts of hate, but the ones that are following afterwards. People seem to think that we can't get over the fact that the school name changed, but there's so much more to it than that. This is a fight for Italian heritage and what we believe in, and no one can change what people believe in and the way they feel. And again, I want to thank Anita, and I would again appreciate the council hopefully putting forward an act that would condemn this kind of bigotry. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. Name and address of the record, please.
David McKillop, 94 Rock Glen Road. Thank you, Councilor President. Just 2 minutes in a short time of walking the streets and meeting people, I find it very interesting, the undercurrent of how frustrated many people are. And I've heard some people several times say, it's time to move on. It's time to move on from this situation. It's time to move on from this situation. What's interesting is that the community did move on. The community decided collectively that, hey, we've got an opportunity to be part of a change of a name. And they took that opportunity and they rose to the occasion. And they were still ignored the second time. So this frustration can't be ignored anymore. It's hurtful, it's sad. It's sad that we have a community that's so divisive right now because of a lack of education. Really, more than anything else. It's a lack of education about the history of Italian Americans and what they went through. It's a lack of education of exactly where these teachings are coming from, and is there validity to any of these teachings? In fact, if you really want to go through history, if you really want to be upset, you have to be more upset about the Spanish Inquisition than you are about Columbus himself. You have to be more upset about that. If you really want to go back in history, you could go all the way back to Egypt and be upset about those folks and how they grew their civilization. And you could just go on and on and on and on and on. It's a real sad situation that we can't come together and figure out how collectively as a community we can move on from this, because there are certain specific people that continue to agitate the situation. One thing I want to make very clear, Jean Barry Sutton made that school about community, about teachers, about parents, about children, and about love and caring. Our school committee made it about a name. And people have to remember that. And that's a real sad situation in a very short period of time. I can't think, or I stand corrected. I would love to have been able to ask Jean Barry Sutton, how many kids came to her on the way to school and said, "Principal, I can't come to this school because the name hurts me." How many kids did that? I can only imagine what the answer would be, because she made it about them. It wasn't about anything else, not the politics of it. We've got to pull back together. We've got to come together somehow, because it's going for the Brooks School. It's going for all the parks. The names are going to just continue on. And how do we get proactive? How does this community stop this movement, or even have a voice to stop this movement? They need to look to someone for that leadership. And where do they go? Who do they speak to? We need help there. We understand that we have that power in elections, but further than that, how do we be proactive and be part of that conversation when it is time for everyone to decide it's the Brooks School, the name has to change, or it's the Columbus Park, the name has to change, or so on and so on. And you can go down the list, how many streets are named after people that you can investigate anything about anyone. You can never look at history through today's lenses and expect a similar result. You just can't. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just comment, it's been bothersome to me as a first-generation Italian American. I was fortunate enough to be raised by a wonderful Italian family, and I was taught lessons by probably one of the greatest men in the world, my dad, who studied in the Jesuit seminary. And he always told me, as I started my journey as a school committee member and a counselor, that no matter what the issue, put yourself on the other side. And he was his saint was Padre Pio, and it meant a lot to our family. And I hear the cries, and I hear my neighbors that are upset. And the naming of the school, like my father would say, stepping aside, if it truly offended one person, it's something that we should look at. And if it really needed to be changed, then we should look at that. I'm disgusted in the process. I thought the process wasn't something that we heard everyone, but why I decided to speak tonight is very important for the fact that I'm very proud of who I am as an Italian American. I wear that with a badge of honor. And what I'm hearing from my neighbors, especially my older neighbors that made Medford such a great community with many other unbelievable nationalities, is that they feel like that they're being talked down to, and they've been thrown away, and the heritages and what they brought to this community is not important. And that's what bothers me, because I think if my mother and father, my grandparents felt that way, I'm doing a major disservice by sitting in the seat by not saying something. So my comments aren't just to talk about it and let you know where I stand, but one thing that my father taught me and the Italian culture taught me, especially in Medford, we always found a way to bring everybody together. And I think Medford's screaming that. And to be honest with you, I think that most people on one side or the other, they feel the same way. They really do. And the people on the other side, they're all not animals. The sides that, when you hear side to side, and the people on this side, you're not disgusting animals. So there's got to be something this community can do. My mother said to me, bring them all to a table. Cook for them. Let everybody sit at a table. Look across the table from each other and talk to each other. And you realize how many things you have in common. We've heard New Medford, Old Medford. That should be that statement should be gone. It's Medford. We said this the other day when we lost Buddy Kelly. Buddy Kelly had a way, as the athletic director, to bring our community together. He made everybody feel like you were a Mustang. And you had one of the prerequisites of being a Mustang is that you had to have pride. And I think everybody that comes to this community, whether you're new or old, you have pride for this community. So I think what we need to do as elected officials, and we need to do with the mayor's office, is try to find that common ground, find a way we can bring everybody together. It could be something as a community event that we bring everybody together and say, hey, let's sit down and let's just talk to each other and understand. Because some of my new neighbors I've talked to, they said, George, I'm just so disgusted with this group that doesn't understand that Columbus was a slave monger and it hurts people. And my discussions with those people and the understanding is that's really not the cry. The cry is that what Columbus meant to the Italian Americans at a very difficult time, they gave them that symbol gave them an understanding of what America was and made them feel part of America when they didn't have a country. Something very similar that a lot of people in this country are going through right now, whether you're Latino, whether you're Brazilian, whether you're Haitian Creole and you're moving to this country. They want to be in our country. They love our country. This is what makes America great. So I know we're not supposed to comment, we're not supposed to make motions. This isn't anywhere that we can do that. But as we move forward, I think that, maybe this council can be creative enough to work together, all 7 of us, and look at all of our groups that we work with and try to find a way with the office across the hall and maybe find a community event that brings everybody to the center of our town and celebrate it with cultural music and cultural foods and open tables. I mean, we have round tables for everything, but I'm almost sure the people in this room haven't really sat down and talked to people on the other side of that social media blog that they're beating up because there's just no communication. So someone told me my best quality when I first started as a coach was I did a great job bringing people together. And I think I'm on a council with a great group of people that want to bring people together. And I think that as we move forward, when we can make motions and we can move forward, that we're creative enough to find something that'll help Medford heal. And it's so divided right now. And it's not comfortable for me. It's not comfortable for my children. This is how I wasn't raised. And we love Medford for a reason. Just like the people that just came in on Carberry and just bought an $800,000 home because they want to be part of Medford. They want to be part of this community. So I think we have to find a way that we really work together. So, you can't belittle the opinions of Ms. D'Antonio. I think it's how you feel. And whether you like it or not, you still have to listen to those words and vice versa. So I thank you for bringing this topic forward just so I can let my feelings, be told that I haven't really expressed. I think that, when I sit back and talk to my dad, these are the stories he tells me he would have told me is to find a way to bring everybody together and use our culture and our heritage to do what's been done for years. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Scarpelli. We have someone from the audience, Mr. Gilio or Mr. Clerk, if you want to mute him, please. Mr. Gilio, name and address of the record, please.
Hi, Bill Giglio, Winthrop Street. What everybody said there is very true. I mean, my question to the council is what as a council can you do to put some sort of a restriction on major name changes like this being put on the ballot? Because we know that the whole process was a farce. So we think they believe their own BS, whatever they want to do. So my question is, in the future, if this same school committee does get reelected, hypothetically, they can now just go on to do the Brooks School and then so on and so forth. Is there anything that the city can do where these major name changes can get put on the ballot so the city, the community has more of an input, has more of a say, sort of the same way Wakefield just did with their mascot? They put it on the ballot and it got voted down. Is there anything that the council or the city can do, or is it the school only the school committee has the jurisdiction for the schools?
From what the understanding is that only the school committee has the jurisdiction for the schools. Unless I think is different. And I think the question with Wakefield, I think, with that on the ballot, that was an informational question also. So,
right, but it's still went on the ballot, and in this, I'm this is not going to stop. I mean, it's going to just continue. And if the community didn't have an input on the last one, we won't on the next one either. It's just the way it is. But thank you guys anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further questions or comments for public discussion?
Mr. President.
Council Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the speakers tonight because I believe this council has tried to act over the last year to be a sounding board for residents that felt that their voice wasn't being heard. And, we may have not have had the ability to make substantive changes, but I think we did act as a sounding board for this community. I would like to say that I don't believe any body, whether it's the city council, the mayor's office, or the school committee, has the sole authority, Mr. President, over city-owned buildings. I do believe that the school committee had the authority to rename the school. However, I don't think there's anything that would prevent us as a city council, which is the legislative body, to put an ordinance in place that would require a check and balance on the naming of any building within the community. So at some point, Mr. President, I would like to offer that as a motion, and I'll do it here tonight if need be, that we request the city solicitor, Kim Scanlon, to look at whether we as a legislative body, the Medford City Council, through a city ordinance, can require that we as a legislative body elected by the people would also have a say in the renaming of any building, whether it's municipal or school building, Mr. President. And that way there would be a check and balance in that process. As we all know, the school committee doesn't even have the authority to appropriate funds. And these buildings are city-owned buildings, Mr. President, and I think we require closer scrutiny. So I would put that in the form of a motion, Mr. President, that we ask the city solicitor whether we can do that via an ordinance. I also think when we talk, Mr. President, about this community and about the division over the last couple of years, it's important that we as a community, I think, call out hatred whenever we see it. I mean, hatred can't be one side or another. Hatred is hatred, right? So what gets me is, someone will say, well, you didn't call out this hatred or that hatred. I think we all stand, and I won't speak for anyone else, we can't as a community tolerate hatred, period. Any type of hatred. And I think as a community, what really divides us, Mr. President, and I have to bring it up, and when you have people on social media, and God bless people that want to use social media, I'm not on it, Mr. President, and it's intentional. I think it's the demise of society, to be quite honest with you. But for those that want to get on social media, Mr. President, I think they have to be careful on the words that they use. Because if your intent is to get your point across, that's one thing. If your intent is to continue to divide, I think you have to be called out on that, Mr. President. Because this is far too good of a community to let that happen. And there's one email, Mr. President, that went out, actually it was social media, it wasn't an email, and it was a call for action right before the Columbus school vote. I won't mention the person's name, although that person didn't mind throwing everyone else in the community under the bus, but that's fine, if that's the way they want to operate. But we as a community, Mr. President, someday this may be you that they're targeting. Someday it may be your group. Someday it may be your ancestry. Someday it may be your religion, Mr. President. And the list goes on and on. I've always stated as an elected official, just because you have the ability and the power to do something doesn't mean it's right. And I've been saying that for decades, Mr. President. And here's a perfect example of a school committee that had the ability, had the power to flex their muscle, and they did it. Didn't matter anything else, they did it. They flexed their muscle. And in my opinion, those are not true leaders. Because a true leader will listen. A true leader will deliberate. And they'll take into consideration, Mr. President, everyone's feelings and factors, Mr. President. And that truly did not happen with this issue. And I think it's a shame. And it's why it polarized our community, Mr. President. But I do, Mr. President, want to read this hateful posting that went out. And I'm sure there are a lot of them. But this one really hit home with me. And it was a call right before the meeting for the Columbus school vote. This is a call to action. The final voting on the new name for the Columbus school is happening on Monday night during a school committee meeting. The meeting starts at 6:30. There will be public participation permitted, and the right wing of Medford is organizing around this. The worst of the worst will be there in force, and they are defending nothing less than white supremacy in Medford. The groups that have been energized by this are using the Trump playbook and creating completely false narratives about what happened in the process of how the name change is being handled. We need bodies at this event in person, and we need faces on Zoom. Fair warning, the people who are going to speak are the most racist, cruel, hateful humans in Medford. And this action will be painful. Mr. President, I was president at that meeting. There were many, many residents present on Zoom, Mr. President, and at the meeting that took time to come down. There were many people in this community that had strong feelings about the renaming of the school. And we're all entitled to our feelings and our opinions. Take that away, what do we have as a society? And to be told that you may have an opinion that differs from someone else, that you're hateful, that you're a racist, that you're a white supremacist for showing up, is a disgrace, Mr. President, an absolute disgrace. And it's an intimidation, nothing more than an intimidation to have people say, you know what, if I show up at that meeting and speak my mind, I'm going to be lumped into this. And we can't allow as a community, no matter what side you are on the issue, because someday, Mr. President, you're going to be on the opposite side. You may be the one they're targeting. And as a community, you would hope we all stand together and we're able to decipher what's right and wrong. Put everything aside. We're all humans. What's right and wrong, Mr. President. And calling people out because they have an opinion or trying to label them in the worst way, Mr. President, calling them white supremacists, calling them hateful. The worst possible thing you can call someone, Mr. President. And for the most part, it's untrue. So that really bothered me. When I read that, Mr. President, I've been elected a lot of years, and that language alone really bothered me. I know there was a lot of language going back and forth. But that language resonated with me because, Mr. President, it's not who we are as a community. Get to know the community that you moved into. Get to know your neighbors. Get to know the people across the street or the people who live on the other side. Listen to what people have to say. Don't be quick to judge and react or paint people in a corner. Oh, you're a righty, you're a lefty, you're this or that. That's hogwash. We all live in the city because we love it, Mr. President. And if you don't love it, you know where the door is. See you later. Because we're not going to tolerate hate, Mr. President, in this community. I hate to see all these stop hatred signs all around the community. People put them out because they feel strongly about it, Mr. President. But that's not who we are. Do we need to work on things? Absolutely. You'd be naive to say otherwise. Are there changes we can make as a community? Absolutely. And I think we're all willing to do it. We all want to do it. But we're not going to get there through a vehicle of intimidation and harassment and name calling. We're not going to get there, and we'll never get there. And if the people think we're going to get there by browbeating people and calling them names, then they're misunderstood, Mr. President. Because it's not going to happen in this community. We're too good of a community, and we're going to rally around this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Council Marks. Council Marks has a motion on the floor. But as you know, this is under public participation, and it will be on next week's agenda, Council Marks. So
I understand that, Mr. President, and I'm fine with that. Just if you could just read back the motion, or I'll state it again. Well, just so for the edification of the people watching now, the wording is that I request that we ask the city solicitor for a ruling, Mr. President, whether or not the city council, through way of a formal city ordinance, can craft the process of the naming of any municipal or school building.
Facility.
Any facility, municipal or school building, Mr. President. And whether we can do that by way of ordinance.
On the motion by Council Marks, seconded by Council Scarpelli, to go on for next week's agenda. So that'll be on the next week, Council Marks.
Okay.
All right, any more, we have one more public participation. Mr. Castanetti. Mr. Clerk, can you unmute Mr. Castanetti, please?
Hello,
Good evening,
Mr. President.
Castanetti. For the record.
Andrew Castanetti, Cushion Street, Medford, Massachusetts. It's very, very sad that the Medford School Committee has caused such a great division in Medford. They said that Christopher Columbus was a bad person. He was no good. He was a criminal of sorts. As far as I'm concerned, it's just hearsay and rumor. So I'd like to know, where's the beef? Can someone, anyone out there, show me in the Medford transcript next week or the week after, to please show me the court case when he was convicted of any major crime, please. Talking about the rumors of bad people, I don't know if Columbus was good or bad. It's all hearsay to me. Then I hear other rumors. Why should we believe anything? For example, did Ms. Rousseau start this problem from the school committee?
Mr. Castanetti, we won't mention any names, please.
Okay, can we mention Columbus's name?
You mentioned Columbus' name.
Even though he's not here to represent himself?
That's correct.
Aren't you kind? Thank you, sir. Also, I want to ask the city lawyer, if a convicted felon is legally allowed
That
to
road, Mr.
run
Cassidy.
and serve as an elected official.
Not going down that road, Mr. Cassidy.
I'm asking you a question about you.
Thank you. Apologize for that. Any further public participation? Okay, motion to revert back to, regular
Second.
business. The motion by Vice President Knight, seconded by Council Scarpelli. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. Communications from the mayor. 21420 to the Honorable President. Dear Mr. President, City Councilors, I respectfully request and recommend that your honorable body approves a supplemental appropriation of the amount of $170,898.10 for perpetual care, from the perpetual care to the cemetery ordinary expense budget. I respectfully request and recommend that your honorable body approves the supplemental appropriation in the amount of $103,050 from the sale of lots and graves to the cemetery salary expense budget. These amounts support the information provided in the fiscal 2022 budget. Sincerely yours, Brianna LeCurrier, Mayor. Questions on this?
Yes, Mr.
Vice
President.
President Knight.
Why are we making a supplemental appropriation if this is something that's included in the fiscal 2022 budget? And we're in the process of deliberating the fiscal year 2022 budget. The supplemental appropriation would be to carry us through the remainder of this fiscal year, I would assume, because it would be a supplemental appropriation supplementing the FY.
We have Alicia Nunley on the call here. Alicia,
Good
here.
Good evening, councilors. Every year I prepare this paper for your body to approve. I'm fine with this being tabled if you want to table it until when the budget is, but I wanted to make sure I got it in on time to go before your body to go with the budget because it's a part of it. It has to be voted separately.
And if I may, Mr. President, this paper is the paper which we usually expend funds from our perpetual care accounts, retained revenue accounts for the funding of positions in the cemetery, if I'm not mistaken.
Is that correct, Alicia?
Yeah, so through the chair, what this is for the perpetual care. Yes, correct. It's the interest earned for the year and it goes in and it helps provide funding to the cemetery for both ordinary and for salary. The perpetual does the ordinary and the salary comes from the sale of lots and graves.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Do we have a motion on the floor?
Move approval.
The motion by Councilor Bear, seconded by Vice President Knight. This is a money paper. Let's call for a roll call vote. Mr. Clerk, please call the vote. Please call the roll.
Council Bears.
Yes.
Council Falco.
Yes.
Vice President Knight. Council Marks.
Yes.
Council Morrell.
Yes.
Council Scarpelli.
Yes.
President Carriero.
Yes, 7 affirmative, motion passes. Okay, paper 21421. Dear Mr. President, City Councilors, I respectfully request and recommend that your honorable body approve the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee, the Community Preservation Fund revenues in the amount of $2,047,125. In addition, I respectfully request that your honorable body approve the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee, the Community Preservation Fund expenditures in the amount of $2,047,125 as follows. Open space, $204,713. Community housing, $204,713. Historic preservation, $204,713. Administration, $102,356. General remainder, $1,330,630. Total, $2,047,125. We have, I think, who's on the call? Alicia, are you handling this evening also?
I am, and I also have Danielle Evans with me from the CPA. So this is the fiscal year 22 appropriation. We're estimating the $2,047,125 with 10% going to open space, community housing, historic preservation, 5% by statute to the administration, and the remainder to the general reserve. So this is the fiscal year 22 appropriation.
Okay. Vice President Knight.
It's my understanding, Alicia, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but at no time, we need to do a minimum of 10% into each one of these buckets, correct, annually?
It has to be a minimum of 10% of each bucket, correct?
So we have to appropriate this money in order to comply with the Community Preservation Act?
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Council Box.
Alicia, do you know how much money we currently have in the historic preservation bucket?
I can check that for you. 1 second. Okay. So in the historic, we have reserved 174,640.
I'm sorry, can you just repeat that again?
Yep, 174,640.
640. So after this appropriation, we'll have 374,640 or 378,640, right around there.
Around there, yes.
Okay. The reason why I asked, Mr. President, is when we just met with the fire chief to discuss the fire department budget, it was mentioned to us that some of the capital plan, as well as some of the narrative from the report that was just commissioned by the mayor to look at our fire stations, spoke about using CPC funds from historic preservation in order to fund some of the renovations of our fire stations. And I just want to make sure that the city administration, and I won't put Alicia on the spot, but I want to make sure that these funds that are out there, that I'm sure they're going to go fast, that this is one of the areas that they were looking at. And I believe the city administration, Alicia, I'm not sure if you're familiar or not, but did receive correspondence back from the Historic Commission stating that indeed fire stations were of historic significance. Are you familiar with that?
I am familiar with that, and that was the amount that I just gave you was the reserve for fiscal year 21. They don't expend that till the following year, and the fiscal year 22 that you would be voting on wouldn't get expended until that is collected, which is the next fiscal year. But they have been faithfully expending out their historic money because she's already moved. She spent $249,519 this year. She has encumbered $20,793 and transferred $439,000. So they've been spending right along their historic bucket. And for the fire stations, what they were looking for was an off-cycle funding with some remaining funds. And she had to make sure that those fire stations qualified underneath the historic preservation in order to use the funds from the CPA.
Which we found out they do, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The only reason why I bring it up is because I know these funds go fast. We've approved a number of preservation items before this council. And I just want to make sure, because it would be the city administration reaching out to the Community Preservation Committee requesting funds for a particular purpose, like they've done in the past. And I would hope that they're requesting funds now to look at some of the renovations on our fire stations. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Box. Danielle Evans. Mr. Clerk, can you unmute Danielle, please? Danielle, name and address for the record, please.
Hi, good evening. Danielle Evans, Community Preservation Coordinator and Housing Planner. I just wanted to just explain a little bit. So the general reserve can be used for any of the program areas. And the reason why we do the minimum 10% in the buckets is so that we have the bulk of the money that's very flexible. So some years we may get, more historic preservation projects or more open space projects, and having them in that general reserve gives the CPC the flexibility to program the funds where the demand is. So the aim would be that they're distributed, a third, but sometimes applications don't, come in that way. So I know that we used all the historic that was in the bucket, and then also drew into the general reserve. So doing the minimum, just to reiterate, gives us the flexibility to fund, projects that are important regardless of which category they're in.
Just if I can follow up, Mr. President. Danielle, thank you very much. So that's an excellent point, because the general remainder is $1.3 million, according to the sheet we have in front of us. So if you're saying a third, there's potentially another, $400,000 available for historic preservation, including the 204. So that makes a huge difference. That's excellent. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilor Scarpelli.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that we convene a committee of the whole meeting with our Community Preservation Committee. And really, now that we've been working with these funds and looking at these different pools, it'd be interesting to get a report to see what demographic, what groups we're really not reaching. That are we getting enough people in the housing field that are requesting enough funding? We get enough people, for the funding for recreation. I know we always talk about the historical sites, and this is perfect, and it's where it needs to go. But at the same time, are we reaching enough people in our community that have the ability to apply for these funds? And are we doing enough to promote that and communicate with the community? So it really just, if we can, is just having a meeting with the committee and just getting a breakdown and just revisit everything and look at it as a whole again, to see as we move forward to the next application process that maybe we should be focusing on one area, not the other, because of making sure that there's equity with the funding. So if we can do that, that'd be great. Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Alicia and Danielle, for being here. So thanks.
Councilor Bears.
Thank you, Mr. President. And yeah, thank you, Alicia and Danielle. I just wanted to add to what Councilor Scarpelli was saying. I know I've spoken with Roberta Cameron. I think Roberta's probably said it before this council. On the housing one, the costs are so high to make a real impact that they'd like to have an affordable housing trust fund so that we can put money into it, build that up over time, and really hit the big projects. So I just wanted to put that out as part of the context as well, because I think, and that may be true for something like the fire stations as well. That's maybe a bigger expense than a park repair or windows on a historical building, something like that. So just wanted to put that out as context, and thank you for letting me speak, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay. Councilor, is that an amendment? No. On the motion, motion by Vice President Knight for approval, second by Councilor Scarpelli. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, 7 in the affirmative, motion passes. Records. The past, Senior Councilor Marks. Councilor Marks, how did you find those records?
Mr. President, I review the records, find them to be in order, and move approval.
Second.
The motion by Councilor Marks for approval, seconded by Councilor Bears. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Motion for adjournments. The motion by Vice President Knight for adjournment, seconded by Councilor Bears. Councilor Marks.
Mr. President, just if maybe you could give our schedule for our budget hearings, if anyone wants to view.
Tomorrow night, at 6 o'clock, Thursday night, 5:30 on Thursday, and we'll do a budget wrap up on Saturday at 9:30.
9:30. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion passes